who's the first to study Cuban nature.
Pero Ortiz es el que descubre la población cubana y la cultura cubana en su integridad.
But Ortiz is the one that discovers the Cuban people and its Cuban society in its entirety.
Empieza con un libro influido por los mozos, con elementos racistas, porque Ortiz es un abogado blanco, hijo de españoles, que estudiaron en España, pero con una soberbia inteligencia.
So Ortiz was a white lawyer, the son of Spaniards who had studied himself in Spain, but who was supremely intelligent.
Su primer libro es un libro racista, yo decía, un libro equivocado, que él lo reconoce y prácticamente lo olvida.
His first book,
cubana, los negros brujos se llama.
his first book is racist. It's something that he himself later acknowledged, and he tried to put it behind him. And it's called Los Negros Brujos, or the Black Witches.
Pero a partir de ahí comienza su conocimiento de las culturas negras en Cuba y se enamora de ellas.
But this is where he begins his research on Cuban culture and falls in love with it.
Y empieza a estudiar la música, el teatro, el habla, las religiones, que él compara, por ejemplo, el panteón de Urubá con el panteón griego. Y además hay tremendas coincidencias y las resalta.
So he begins to study all facets of Cuban culture, music, theater, religion, where he spends a lot of his time, for example, comparing the pantheon of Yoruba deities with the Greek mythological pantheon.
Todo esto se veía como supervivencias incivilizadas de los africanos en Cuba. Ortiz, que era un sabio, establece que no es así. Y lleva, por ejemplo, a una negra cantante maravillosa, preciosa, además, que se llama Mercedita Valdés, a cantar en la aula magna de la Universidad de La Habana para estupor del profesorado aristocrático, que de momento está topando con manifestaciones de una parte esencial de los cubanos.
So these cultural forms were considered barbarian, savage, beneath contempt, but Ortiz, a very wise man, realizes and discovers and asserts that they're not. And he actually does things like bringing Mercedita Valdés, who's a singer, Afro-Cuban singer, to sing at the Aula Magna of the University of Havana for an essentially white elite academic audience.
En los años 40.
In the 1940s.
Bueno, y después tengo que hablar del poeta, de Nicolás Guillén. Yo creo que Ortiz y Guillén son dos puntos de partida, uno en la ciencia, en la culturología, Nicolás en la literatura. El hombre que escribió aquellos versos extraordinarios que dice: ¿sabéis mi otro apellido? El apellido sangriento y capturado.
Oye, poesía no. Poesía is too much. No, so there are two important poles here to consider in terms of the topic that we're addressing today. In the field of science and anthropology, you have Fernando Ortiz, but on the other side, on the side of literature, you have Nicolás Guillén, the poet.
Bueno, Guillén tomó toda esa tradición cultural folclórica, o a veces vista siempre como pura sonoridad, ritmo y color nada más, y lo convirtió en un drama, lo convirtió en el drama de su poesía. Bueno, ya voy a terminar.
So Guillén took what was a folkloric tradition, which had been son and lumière, it had been just for sounds, and turned it into drama.
Muchas gracias. Si ustedes después tienen alguna pregunta, pues seguiremos hablando.
Thank you, and if you have any other questions later, we'll continue the conversation.
Como yo tengo mucho menos temor al ridículo que mis distinguidos colegas, decidí traducir mis palabras y leerles a ustedes en inglés, en la esperanza de que pudiéramos ahorrar un poco de tiempo para las preguntas y el diálogo que seguramente tendremos luego. Only in the hope, but perhaps you do need translation for my English, I hope not. Okay. Notes on the thought of Nicolás Guillén on the racial question between 1929 and 1934. Among the Cuban personalities who have given the greatest and most lucid attention to the racial issue during the last century is without doubt Nicolás Guillén. Recognized by critics and scholars as one of the leading exponents of poetry in the Spanish language, Guillén has also been acclaimed by his country as a national poet. As a central theme of his substantial prose and his extraordinary poetic creation, he promoted a fuller and more exact knowledge and understanding of the cultural mix that characterized us as a nation, the enhancement of the contributions of Africans and their descendants in shaping our definitive profile, the vindication of black men and women, and the struggle against prejudice and discrimination linked to skin color. In this talk, I want to review some aspects of Guillén's thought on the racial question clearly expressed in his literary production between 1929 and 1934. El Camino de Harlem, Harlem's Way. From a very early age, the racial question is a theme that is present in the life of Nicolas Guillén. First, within the context in which he was born, nothing could shield him from first-hand experience. From childhood itself, racial prejudice exists because of his being a person of mixed race, in spite of being from a petit bourgeois family and having a father who was a prominent figure in the social and political environment of Camagüey. In an interview with Jaime Zarusky in 1973, Guillén recalls that when he was provoked to fight by those who had been his playmates until the moment before, they made the first assault by calling him Negro. Years later, the gregarious attitude of Guillén and the condition of social segregation between whites and blacks prevailing in the society of that time, and especially in Camagüey, meant that in his youth he frequently had relations with black societies in the province. Knowing that translate poetry is a very hard task, I have reproduced for you the 2 poems I'm going to quote in this lecture. It could be also a souvenir from this. Years later, the gregarious attitude of Guillén and the condition of social segregation between whites and blacks prevailing in the society of that time, and especially in Camagüey, meant that in his youth he frequently had relations with black societies in the province. In several interviews and in his autobiography, Páginas Vueltas, he has referred to the characteristics of these societies, to the divisions existing between blacks and people of mixed race, and even between blacks who were associated in different institutions according to economic resource and the members' social standing. Guillén knew these things very well. On several occasions, he referred to the disgust that this caused him and declared his preference for the Victoria Society, the black society with a mass character. In 1923, the funds of the Victoria Society financed the initial cost of the Liz magazine, of which Guillén was the director. In an interview with Francisco Garzón Céspedes and collected by Nancy Morejón in her critical assessment, Guillén, in referring to the importance of the magazine, states, "The Liz magazine had no great importance. It was intended primarily to reflect the cultural activity, more or less, of the societies called of color, black, in Camagüey, and to fight against racial discrimination, not only of white towards black, which was very strong at that time, but also between mulattoes and blacks." The point I want to highlight is that when Nicolas Guillén went to settle himself permanently in Havana in 1926, he already had an operative consciousness about racial problems that affect the Cuban nation. Apropos of the causes of the phenomenon of discrimination that was then noted in the young republic, 2 elements stand out within Guillén's consciousness. I again quote Guillén in Páginas Vueltas. The historical proximity of slavery, 4 centuries of dreadful Spanish colonialism, and the geographical proximity of the United States, especially the southern part of that country. In April 1929, he published an article entitled El Camino de Harlem, Harlem's Way, on the page Ideales de una Raza, Ideals of the Race, of the newspaper Diario de la Marina. This page, promoted and directed by engineer Gustavo Urrutia, played an important role in the reflections that at the end of the 20s and beginning of the 30s took place in our country about white-black relations, the persistence of inequalities related to skin color, and the ways to solve these problems. It's worthwhile pausing at this article. After referring to Lino Lowe and Juan Gualberto Gomez, from whom he states receiving the mandate to continue the struggle that has remained unfinished, as evidence the persistence of important inequalities linked to skin color in the Republican era, he reflects thusly. The fact that it still persists, unfortunately, in the middle of such a fraternal origin as ours should not arouse despair, and even less make us give up from a struggle that is truly patriotic. What follows in the article is, above all, a firm warning about the necessity to recognize and confront without hypocrisy, says Guillén, white and black prejudice and inequalities prevailing in the Republic, and the consequence that could lead to the exclusion of the black from what he then calls the life of Cuban relationship. This is a situation that he exemplifies with his own inability of getting employment in accordance with his qualification because of the color of his skin. The risk that is from, he concludes, is to end, after so much struggle and effort, in the Harlem way. Because of the legacy he received from his family and the social environment, and from his life experience and accumulated readings, Guillén sees the attainment of the historical destiny of the Cuban nation as inseparable from the total emancipation of black Cubans. There can be no homeland without blacks and whites enjoying, in reality, the same rights. It is a problem that must be faced and resolved without hypocrisy by whites and blacks all together. As long as this is not achieved, the homeland will not be attained. It will be half done, at risk of being frustrated, especially because of the proximity and influence of the United States. How come you John Salty? Almost exactly 1 year after the publication of The Road to Harlem, Guillén Motivos de Son was published, Son Motive, was published in Ideales de una Raza, Ideals of the Race. Much has been written and written well about Motivos. I will bring it up only to illustrate another aspect of Guillén's understanding of the racial problem that utterly retains its validity. The collection of 8 poems published at that time begins with the poem Negro Bembón, thick-lipped colored boy. You have it. Guillén has related on more than one occasion the dream experience linked to the creation of this poem, and in general, the anthology of poems. In commenting on the experience narrated by Guillén, Augier has said, "It's to presume that no supernatural factor participates, but the powerful collective subconscious that saturates him, because of racial origin and full popular coexistence." Of course, I believe that Augier is right, but there is something more. By then, Guillén is aware of the cultural mechanism placed in the service of domination and the necessary subjugation of the black since the dawn of slavery. In the interview with Jaime Zarusky mentioned above, he stated in a long response, I quoted Guillén, "What is serious is that blacks, when brought to America, had the Greco-Roman concept of beauty imposed on them by their masters, and they became accustomed to think that to the extent one looks like the Apollo de Belvedere, or as a woman looked like the Venus de Milo, they would be beautiful. There is where a terrible conflict arose in those black men, because never in their life could see themselves as Apollo, nor black women as Venus. Now, when in Negro Bembón, thick-lipped colored boy, which is the first song poem I've written, I say that, ¿por qué te pone tan bravo cuando te dicen Negro Bembón? Si tiene la boca santa, Negro Bembón." The first four lines. There I am trying to remove from the head of the black man this conception that the white master has given him, and white culture in general, making him believe that he is inferior because his physiognomic features do not correspond to the archetype of good culture. The purpose of the scenario initiated in Motivos will then continue throughout his entire work. In the poem Llegada, Arrival, and the black madrigals of Sombro Gozongo, in his great elegies, I am thinking especially of El Apellido, the surname, Guillermo declamaba un fragmento, and Elegy to Jesus Menéndez, and to some extent it is also present in his poem to Angela Davis from La Rueda Dentada y Cockfield, without mentioning his prose, which also several times addressed the issue in a more direct and equally substantial way. Obviously, the issues mentioned by Guillén are only a part of the deculturation process put into practice against African slaves. Manuel Moreno Fraginal, in his essay Cultural Contribution and Deculturation, argues very seriously about issues of a scope, the systematic method, the cruelty with which it was put into practice in the direct function of economic interest. We still carry with us the consequence of this process. In an intelligent and sympathetic text included in an anthology of articles from the Caminos magazine about the racial issue, which was published in 2010, Yusimir Rodriguez, a young Cuban black woman, reflects about the persistence of stereotypes among blacks which devalue their physiognomic features. For example, here in the case of women. But her acumen takes her to perceive a more subtle and surely more perverse manifestation. She reflects about the stories of narrator Alberto Guerra, in which the protagonists are professors, writers, that is to say, people with a certain degree of achievement, talents, and virtues. Some of these stories were later dramatized for television. In the absence of physical description of the character, Yusimi, who is black, intelligent, educated, even knowing that Alberto Guerra is also black, that he was a professor, and that clearly he is a writer, imagine at first that the protagonists are white. The matter is serious, although I don't know if it is as serious as the fact that in the televised staging all the protagonists were white. The process of devaluation and dilation of identity can apply one to beauty, but also to achievement, virtues, talents, to the strength of making impossible their representation. It is still necessary to ask, how come you don't cite it? There is another cultural consequence of the complex structure of domination implemented by the dominant class, which Guillén identifies early in the black sector, that has obtained or believed that to have obtained some upward mobility through education, perhaps one should say white education, and it is the reaction of black cultural heritage. Look at the mysterious vein. Guillén has referred many times to how the social movement that overthrew the tyranny of Gerardo Machado and the intense political illness that followed the Austin influenced him. He has been explicit in saying that this enabled him to see politics from another perspective, to discern the possibility of a government that was truly in the service of the people, and to undertake a road of political affiliation that would be formal 4 years later during the Spanish Civil War. This other perspective, from a higher position, allowed him to appreciate both similarities and diversity, and it then became necessary a different understanding of causes and solutions. Guillén is one of the founders, and he contributed like few others, so that we could proudly become aware of our Caribbean identity. In doing so, he well knew that our dominant class would not enjoy being part of so much blackness, and he also questioned an important component of a regional model of domination that actually fully preserved their intentions. Westcliff Indies Limited marks the point of departure of Guillén consciousness in relation to the racial problem. Guillén already sensed that it was necessary to resolve the problem for all to resolve the problem of anybody. Now he will turn this intuition into deep conviction of the class origin of many of the ills that he has faced, and he will also know that social revolution was the only way to end these problems. There is a paradigmatic element in Guillén's thought and strategy to confront prejudice, racial discrimination, and racism, which stands out in West India's limits. Although educated in an environment of little encouragement and recognition of scientific work, he felt a deep respect for science. His assessment of Fernando Ortiz, to whom he dedicated more than one article, and his posthumous elegy to malacologist Don Carlos de la Torre do not leave any margin for doubt on this point. He came to science consciously, to pair it with humor, irony, and even sarcasm at times, to strike there where he knew that it was worse for the races. Zarusky, in the interview mentioned several times before, and to which this comes so much, inquired about the very unique way in which Guillén posed the problem of racism in his poems. Guillén responded in this way: what happens is that something else works there, a scientific interpretation of the racist problem in Cuba, and in a certain way, it is a subtle form of revenge. What could hurt most a racist was to show that he has elements in his blood of the race against which he discriminates. And this road was helpful for me, since my character shows itself in a humorous way about many issues that people respect, and this allows me to open up everything in poetry. Guillén does not explicitly mention, but it is clear that he has in mind his masterful sonnet, El Abuelo. You have it. I'm going to declare in Spanish. Esta mujer angélica de ojos septentrionales, que vive atenta al ritmo de su sangre europea, ignora que en lo hondo de su alma golpea un negro el parche rudo de roncos atabales. Bajo la línea escueta de su nariz aguda, la boca en fino trazo traza una raya breve, y no hay cuervo que manche la geografía de nieve de su carne que fulge temblorosa y desnuda. Ah, mi señora, mírate las venas misteriosas, boga en el agua viva que allá adentro te fluye, y ve pasando lirios, nelumbios, lotos, rosas, que ya verás pasar junto a la fresca villa la dulce sombra inquieta del abuelo que huye, el que rizó por siempre tu cabeza amarilla. Guillén, 8 years later, science has completely confirmed what Guillén then could only guess. Research carried out by the Center for Medical Genetics has shown that in Cuba, individuals of white skin color have up to 72.6% of their ancestral genes being of African origin, and individuals of black skin color have up to 86.8% of their ancestral genes being of European origin. I want to conclude with a quotation from the prologue to Guillén's anthology of poems, Songo Roco Songo. I quote, "Finally, I will say that these are mulatto poems. They perhaps participate in the same elements that entered into the ethnic composition of Cuba, where we are all a bit nísperos, mulattos. Nísperos is like mulattos. Does it hurt? I think not. In any case, it needs to be said before we're going to forget it. The injection of Africa in this country is so deep, and so many capillary currents cross and interweaving our well-aggregated social hydrography, that to decipher the hieroglyph would be a job for miniaturists." And he concludes, "And the two rays that in the island emerge just under the surface of the water, distant as it seems, lay down an underwater hook like those deep dish that link to continents. For the moment, the spirit of Cuba is mestizo, and from the spirit to the skin, the final color will come to us. One day we will say Cuban color." Thank you very much for giving me.